Well, hello and welcome to Lucy the Tudor's contribution to Clothing Day of Virtual Torm. Talking about how to fasten your clothing to get the most accurate and effective look for your historical recreations. First off, the most simple way that clothing has been fastened over the years is using pins of whatever form, bone or copper alloy. To clarify the copper alloy, the closest we've got to historical copper alloy is the copper alloy of brass that we use nowadays. It's the only one that you can get on the market readily, so it's near enough, and it behaves very similarly to the original that's found all over in archaeological digs. So if we start with the bobblehead pin, the simplest form with a twist attached to the top of the head. Longer ones for fixing hats and complicated veils, getting shorter and stronger sometimes for fixing sleeves, pinners and similar things. If you're using fine linens, you want to use a finer pin, so I do different sizes. We go one thicker than that if you really need a strong one, and that's about as thin as you would want to go. There are different designs of the tops of heads. The figure of 8 comes in the medieval and Saxon, and again we have here a copy of a pin found only at Whitby Abbey so far in the Saxon layers. So if you want to be accurate as a Saxon, we don't know how often they had this pin, but we do know that it's definitely found in the Saxon layers of deposits of Whitby Abbey. The pearl-topped pin is the style of fitting the top of a bead or a pearl to it, which is, again, there is evidence of this method of fitting. All the plain pins are £1 each regardless of size. Tell me what size and thickness you want. The pearl pins are £2 each. Obviously, copper alloys are getting used for making brass needles or needles that have a softer eyelet, and I make bone and boxwood needles for nail binding and netting, which are £2 each for the bone or boxwood nail binding, and those start at £8 for the smallest netting needle on its own, and we move on up different sizes. Another way of fastening your clothing, described by Sarah Thursfield as around since prehistoric times, is the hook and eye in various forms, not necessarily in exactly this form, but some form of a hook and loop fastening have been around a huge amount of time. These are around since at least the 1300s in this design. You need to choose your hook and eye carefully as to the job it's going to do, so I've given arbitrary sizes to make it easier for me to sell them. So we start off with the Lucy the Tudor size 1, which is a finer brass and a short hook and eye for fine linens. Then we move on through 2s for a slightly bigger eyelet, and again still for fairly fine linens, a little bit stronger. Size 3s, it's a heavier weight brass and stronger for those reasons. So you're moving up to your woolens and fastening partlets and other garments. If you want a little bit more play in your hook, then you would want to go to the size 4, which is modelled on those found in Patterns of Fashion, as an example from Eleanor of Toledo's gown. Then slightly bigger, we're going to size 5, which will take for doing arming doublets and other heavier things. Just as an indication of strength, I wore a pair of size 4 hooks and eyes holding together a skirt that was straining against my increased midriff for over 5 years before I made myself a skirt that fit. So they'll take a certain amount of pressure if you should gain weight like I do, or indeed if you wish to use it in something that needs a little bit of strength. So it's a design that takes an awful lot of strain. I'll talk about those soon. Buttons. Please excuse the occasional weird appearance of disembodied things. This is the easiest kind of button to make, which is a round cloth button. Just to show you, these are my earliest example of these, particularly large ones made for my first husband. The buttons have lasted considerably longer than he did. Example of my earliest weaving there as well, to fasten them with. This is the coat that's had the most abuse from all the family. It's the thing that we slang on the children when they were younger and freezing cold, because you can wrap up a whole 8-year-old in one of these coats and keep them snugly on a camp, and it's been shoved in the bottom of tubs and generally abused. These round cloth buttons are a lot stronger than you'd think. They move on to decorative use in the 15th and 16th century as well, but in smaller varieties and dozens of them up and down a sleeve. Happy to make those for you for 50p a button if you want to send me your cloth offcuts from the garment you're making. I quite like doing them, so it's a good way of, if you can't be bothered or you're not confident of making them nice and round. Right, and the next way of fastening